The folder was lying on the edge of the table, and Victor looked at it, not daring to pick it up. He could not accept that his own daughter could do without him. But the private detective showed a couple of photos, and there was no doubt, Rita looked so happy that he even froze. It had been a long, long time since he had seen such a sincere and open smile on the face of his child, even if already an adult, but still a child. After the death of his wife, he could not love anyone. The only one left too soon, and all he had left was little Margarita. So he gave all his strength and love to her. Raised, learned, and now she is happy without him. Lately, Victor and his daughter have not been getting along, they have only been arguing and swearing. And all because of his desire to take care and provide a reliable rear and future. He is not eternal, so we need to make sure that Margot is completely protected. And what, if not money, can give guarantees of freedom and confidence in the future, especially since life is without worries? It's just what she's used to. He tried to make sure that his only baby never needed anything. His business was booming, there was no point in worrying. The best school, then the university, it was not worth talking about. He gave her everything she wanted. But more and more often the thought crept in, and what will happen when he is gone? Yes, there is a bank account, but Rita will not manage the company, the money will run out sooner or later, and then what? The decision came suddenly. Another meeting with a partner gave me an idea. If you find a worthy candidate, then there will be someone to transfer the business to, and the problems will disappear. And the partner just has a son of Rita's age, a smart guy. Works in a firm, knows the basics of his father. It is decided, he will marry them, and the anxiety will pass. The family company will be in safe hands, so there will be no need to worry about the daughter's future. But the daughter was suddenly indignant. "Dad, are you out of your mind? I will not go to any marriage, and even according to your calculation." Obstinacy was intensified by the unwillingness to even meet a potential groom. She and her partner had already looked at the restaurant for the celebration, it remained only to bring the children together. Roman was convinced that as soon as Rita and Vasily met, everything would fall into place. And Victor had no choice but to hope. Hopes were not fulfilled. Margarita was stubborn and did not want to listen to her father in any way. "Dad, I'm telling you again, it's not about my stubbornness. I don't like this Vasily of yours. And I'm not going to get married just because my parents decided so. It's business and money that's important to you, and I'm going to find someone I love." The businessman flared up then and said a lot of nasty things. After a couple of days, they reconciled, but the tense situation persisted. "Well, what kind of love, if we are talking about the future? Merging the company will make them omnipotent. It is unlikely that there will be someone who dares to challenge the primacy in the market, which means that the income will be constant, and Rita will have everything, period, without options." He decided so. Vasily was crazy about the applicant for the position of wife. No wonder Rita was not only beautiful, but also smart. In everyday life, of course, it is impractical, but what does it matter when there is money? That's why Victor tried so hard, just for her sake. "Dad, let's close the subject with Vasya once and for all. I won't marry him, no matter what plans you make. We don't live in the last century. Slavery was abolished long ago, I have the right to vote, especially if it's about me. My dear daughter, don't you understand? I care about you. I don't want you to ever find out what it's like to sit without a penny. You are my blood, I have to take care of you." If Mom had been there, she wouldn't have supported your decision. It was a blow below the belt, and Victor suffered. "That's the thing, I'm alone and I'm responsible for you, too, but thanks for reminding me." Resentment rang in her voice, and Rita tried to correct the situation. "Dad, don't you understand? I want the way it was with you and Mom to be together forever. Rita, our relationship. This is rather an exception to the rule. We are not planning anything in the evening, we are going to dinner." "With whom? Again with Vasya and his father?" "Yes, and this is not discussed." Rita lost her temper and stormed off to her room. "Well, how is this possible?" No, she understood her father and his concern, but it went beyond everything. Worst of all, she just didn't know how to get out of this situation. The evening was terrible. Margarita, as she was going to, behaved coldly and made it clear to those present that it was not intentional to change her opinion. Already at home, my father broke up in earnest. They had a big fight. In a fit of emotion, he reproached his daughter that she would not last without money, and that was for nothing. There was another reason for Margarita's categoricality, but it was hard for her to admit it herself. More recently, walking after shopping, she came across a quiet cafe in the center. That's where I met the main reason. Then the coffee lasted for a long 3 hours. She met Bogdan. The guy conquered her so much that Rita was even afraid of her feelings at first. He was a very ordinary hard worker without rich parents, but because of this he was independent and serious. And his eyes. She was just drowning in them, for the first time in her life, and was not at all interested in his condition. They met as often as they could. Bogdan limped a little, said it was a childhood trauma. Margot knew she liked that too. She liked everything about him. Both he and his relationship to her, but her father would definitely not approve of her choice, so everything was very difficult. The mood could not be hidden, so Bogdan soon untangled the reason for her sadness. Don't worry about it, I'm ready to wait as long as you want. Well, just so you know, if anything happens, just call and I'll pick you up in a minute. I don't promise any restaurants in Moscow yet, but I will try to ensure that you are provided for. I'm not a quitter, I have a job. And my mother will only be glad if you come to live with us. Margarita did not think that she would have to take advantage of this offer so soon. Another scandal and a showdown with his father went very far that time. And a day later she packed the necessary things and, leaving a note to Dad, called Bogdan. And now Victor was deciding what to do. The first days after his daughter's reckless act, as he believed, he waited. He will try to live separately, without his money, and will quickly change his mind. He blocked the bank card, but the staff claimed that Rita did not even try to withdraw money. So there is a reserve. Let's wait a little longer. The worst part was that he was just wondering where she had gone. Friends shrugged their shoulders, they hadn't seen Rita for a long time and hadn't called up. Anxiety grew, and my father found a private detective. And so it turned out that he found out about Bogdan and about his daughter's feelings. One thing surprised me. In the photo that the detective showed, Rita looked indecently happy without him. He has to find out everything. Victor resolutely pulled the folder left by the detective towards him and flipped through the pages and pictures. And here's the address. Or should I call her first? Dad, I'm glad to hear from you. Rita was not surprised by his call, moreover, the offer to visit her pleased her. Well, of course, come, we will be only too glad. Everything was unusual, and the ringing voice of her daughter, and her words. It was possible to sort it out only on the spot. A small neat house on the outskirts of the city by the standards of Victor himself was not rich, but clean, well-groomed, this cannot be taken away. Of course, he was used to a different environment, but it was here that his daughter was happy. Why? Rita looked out from behind a low fence. Why are you standing there? Come on in soon, the pie is getting cold. A pie? What kind of pie? Dumbfounded, Victor went into the house and saw a table set in the small living room. You won't believe it, Dad, I baked this pie myself. Bogdan's mom showed me, and I could, can you imagine? In general, as it turned out, I like to cook, I'm good at it. Rita was chirping, and her father was silent. Everything was unusual, everything was unsettling. The same Bogdan and his mother appeared. Well, quite nice people, but not rich. We'll have to stay otherwise, and he can't just leave like that. He himself did not notice that the clock on the wall measured out more than 1 hour. It was comfortable and cozy from something, it was also strange. There are no expensive sets and helpful waiters, there are no exquisite dishes and expensive champagne. The usual homemade food, calm unhurried conversations. It was as if he had returned to the time when his beloved wife was alive. And the worst part, he seemed to be beginning to understand his daughter's happiness. Bogdan, I'm sorry if the question is incorrect, but how long have you been limping, or is it innate? It's okay, don't worry. No, it's not a birth defect. I was still in first grade, my mom and I had an accident. Not really, of course, an accident, we were hit by a car when crossing the road. The most annoying thing is that Mom was just saying how important it is to follow the rules and switch only to the green light. Mom doesn't remember anything about that car at all, it seemed to have appeared out of nowhere at such a high speed. I remembered the color, my mother was just talking about the traffic light. And the car is green, so bright. In my memories there is only color, nothing else. Victor felt all the blood drain from his face. It just can't be. Dad, what's wrong with you? Are you sick? Rita touched his forehead excitedly. He really wasn't feeling well. For a couple of minutes he fell out of reality to immerse himself in the past, which he so carefully forgot. Well, here's the reckoning, it's time to pay the bills. And where did it all happen? Victor's voice was low and trembling. When he heard the address, he fell silent. There could be no doubt, there were too many coincidences: place, car, time, people. Bogdan, I have to tell you something. And, you know, I will understand everything that you decide to do after my story. I am ready to answer, even if it is late. They were 25. Wealthy parents just gave a friend a car that they hadn't even managed to register yet. Vovka was so excited then that he didn't want to wait until everything was done in the traffic police. That evening they drove through the streets of the city, enjoying the speed and freedom. Vova was driving. That's when it all happened. He just didn't have time to slow down. I didn't think that someone would cross the road in that quiet area. There would be more experience, Vovka would be able to, and so. The car hit two people, a woman and a boy about 7 years old. The terrified friend did not stop and sped away from the scene of the crime. Parents, of course, had to tell everything. The car immediately disappeared, as if it had never existed. Vovka was sent abroad. No persuasions that it would be necessary to find those people were accepted. Do you know what you're talking about? They'll put us in jail, and me, and you too, for the company. Then Victor, still very young, got scared, tried to forget everything. They wrote about the hit and run, but the culprits were not found. There was no car in the city that was bright green, like a traffic light. A couple of years later, Victor found out that his friend had not gotten rid of the habit of speeding. He never returned to the country. Somewhere in Europe, I didn't fit into a sharp turn, the car flew off a cliff. Vovka died. And now, years later, he alone is responsible for that case. And it doesn't matter who was driving. He had to force Vovka to stop and provide first aid, take the injured to the hospital, pay for treatment, but he did not do that. I am ready to take any punishment, because I consider myself as guilty as a friend. You have the right to call the police, in which case the statute of limitations will not apply. Bogdan was the first to speak. He was calm and absolutely confident. You know, it won't change anything. I don't consider you personally to blame. Yes, the incident greatly changed my life with my mother, but maybe that's what made me the way I am. I had a hard time then, it's true. But I was able to overcome everything and became strong. There can be no question of any accusations. You've been tormenting yourself with guilt for quite a long time, so it seems that you've redeemed everything too. This young man was so wise that it turned out he was much older than he really was. Victor was glad that the burden on his shoulders had finally been lifted. The forgiveness of these people has become a new point of life. It's not even that they won't go to the police. Victor thought about that day so many times that he was ready for any payment options. The point was that he was able to tell everything. He could have kept silent, not confessed to anything, then no one would have found out anything. But it was necessary for him to calm his own conscience, which had been tormenting and tormenting for so many years. And people understood and appreciated it. That was the main thing. Victor was driving home and realized that he did not want to part with new acquaintances at all. Of course, Rita stayed there, and he didn't even have a thought to take his daughter. It seems that he was beginning to understand her passion, her feelings, and her happiness. It certainly wasn't about money, and it was true. Happiness can be in small things, he remembered. And the money? Well, yes, they are important, of course, but they are absolutely unable to help in some moments of life. It's just good if money ends up where happiness lived before it. Still, he's a smart guy. Victor parked the bus of his mansion and thought for a minute. But now he has someone to transfer the business to. How he didn't think of it right away. He will give both the company and the daughter into good hands, and these hands seem very reliable.